Hi, this is Chris Jones with SaaSier.com. I'm going to walk through a GMP module that we've developed to help companies who fall underneath the FDA guidelines of 21 CFR Part 111, or companies that are doing nutritional supplements for animals that may be members of the NASC, and they may fall underneath the NASC cGMP guidelines. So what we use as our baseline is we use a system called Open ERP, which is an open source ERP package. And what we've done is we've made modifications to it specifically to help with the compliance. So you'll see across the top there's a number of different modules that can be installed for Open ERP. There are CRM modules, project management, accounting, warehousing, and we've made a lot of enhancements to other modules also. But I'm going to cover specifically the GMP ones in this presentation. So the first thing we're going to do here is we come into GMP settings, and this is one of our one of our clients that's allowed us to show a copy of their database as far in this demo. So what we do is we come into the GMP settings, and the first thing the system's going to do is going to ask you some questions. Now these are the default answers that you're probably going to want to select if you want to be compliant with sort of the current thinking from the FDA. So question around vendor qualification. And this is again for you to decide how you want to run your business. Do you perform an initial audit of a vendor? If so, you're going to check it off. Do you need to do follow-up audits? And if so, what is the schedule you're going to do those? And then the next thing is, do you do COA verification? That's certificate of analysis. Verification meaning that you don't trust the COA you get from the vendor, but what you do is you take that COA and you take a sample from them. You actually pull an actual sample from a product you've received from the vendor, and you've sent it off to a third-party laboratory in order to do the testing. And if that's the case, how many COA verification tests do you need to do? And most companies are doing 3. They'll test 3 incoming samples from a certain vendor. And then here we can also associate, well, what SOP do you have that you've associated with this certification process? And you can see this kind of leads into how the system allows you to store your standard operating procedures, your SOPs. So here I can click on one, and I can actually pull up, I could add, maybe I have multiple SOPs that I've associated with the vendor qualification or the vendor certification. So you'll see that we have one in here that we went ahead and put in, and I'll get to that in a minute, where we can assign employees to it, document owners, and then training procedures around it. So let's go ahead and go into that. So we're going to go into here under manuals, and we'll go into SOPs. So here we have a number of different SOPs for different processes. We have ones for delivery orders, incoming shipments, vendor certification, vendor audits, a whole number of different procedures. How we do manufacturing orders. One of the things we did is we came in here for delivery order, and we actually created videos along with and you can see this is just in a test database, so this isn't fully completed. But what we did is we went ahead and actually embedded a video in here, and the video is just like the video you're watching right now. It's a voiceover video that will show the employee, for example, how to receive the delivery order. And then you can do is actually go ahead and have your written procedure. So unlike a paper SOP that you have in some large binder, this gives us the ability to put videos in it. If this was an SOP around cleaning the equipment, you could grab your cell phone real quick. You could make a 5-minute video. You could put it on YouTube, mark it as a private video, and then embed the embed code for that inside of here. And I'll just show you an example of how we did that. So I come in here to the source code, and you can see the YouTube source code. And you can get that if you went to YouTube. You'll see a link called share. It'll have a little tag. You could come into this HTML area. You could embed it in there. And then the video would show up. So we think this is a really nice complement to just the written procedure for the times when a video makes sense. And again, obviously not something that can be done with paper. Okay, so let's go back and let's look at some other SOPs. Let's say we have one here on manufacturing orders. Let's get one that has some text in it. So we'll go back to this vendor certification procedure. And we're going to click on Edit. So what happens here is this is where I can set the permissions for this. So the document owner, I'm logged in as administrator. I created it under this account, so it's going to, whoever creates it, it's going to mark as the document owner. And we can set access levels in here as to who has access to create these SOPs. But this is the next piece that I think is pretty interesting, is I can come in here and I can set on a job position level what access different people have to this specific SOP. So I have this vendor certification. Maybe I have a regulatory affairs manager. I want them to have read access. I want them to have write access. And we'll say training and approval. Now let's go ahead and come in here and let's have someone else. How about a production manager? Well, maybe I want the production manager to read this. I don't want them to be able to make changes to this document. I do want them to be notified for training, and the approval, they're not going to be checked off for. And let's do one more. Let's say we have a quality assurance manager, and let's say we want that access. Now, I go ahead and click Save on this. So let me go back and explain what this actually does. Anybody with the job position of Regulatory Affairs Manager, that could be multiple users, they can read this SOP, they can they have write access to it, and the system will track. If they make changes to it, it will track it. If they are checked off as training, you'll see, and I'll explain how that goes into the SOP training area in a minute. And what approvals does is everybody who is marked off as approval has to approve it before before the latest version of the SOP goes into effect. You'll see this effective date. Let's say I have an SOP, I'm making changes to this SOP. I want to come in here and I want to make an update to it. Right? Maybe I've come in, I've changed some text in here. And I want that to be effective the last day of the month. What will happen here is the Regulatory Affairs Manager and the Quality Assurance Manager will both have to approve this. So they'll come over here to SOP approval, and what they'll see is they'll see the SOP inside of here. Let's go back here to, now we're going to say, we'll say publish. Okay, it just means I don't have any employees set up with those titles. So what will happen though is that anybody with that job title this SOP will show up under the SOP approval, and then they will have to go in there and click a button that says approve. So if the Regulatory Affairs Manager approved it, but the Quality Assurance Manager didn't approve it, then the latest version of the SOP will not go into effect. Now anybody who is marked as training will have to come into the SOP training area, click on that same SOP, and basically click off that they've reviewed it. So this is for employees that are actually going to be the ones responsible for executing this SOP on a daily basis. So it could be that you have somebody that is in charge of doing your vendor certification. It could be instead that you have somebody here that is in charge of pest control. Okay, well the person in charge of pest control, maybe you have someone in here that is let's see, maybe I just have a technical service manager, right? And if I just said they can read it and they have to click on training, what this means is that if this person does not go into this SOP and click a button that says, yes, I have reviewed the latest version of the SOP, I've actually read it, then what's going to happen is we can set reports, and these reports will show when we're out of compliance. So this is an out of compliance report. And what that out of compliance report is going to tell me in this situation is that I have an SOP, it could have been pest control, and I had an effective date. Let's say the effective date was, let's say it was the 18th. So what's going to happen here is if every employee who is a technical service manager has not clicked that they have reviewed it, meaning that they've been trained on it, effectively they've read it, then what's going to happen is, and if that's not done by the effective date, then we're going to get a report that says we're out of compliance. And then obviously you could then do is see, well, which employees have not said that they have done this yet. The approval section, this is where if I'm the one who created the SOP or made the latest changes to it, and somebody hasn't approved it yet, I can go over to that person and go, hey, I sent you this SOP, why haven't you clicked on approval yet? Do you have any questions on it? And there's complete record trails for all of this. So we'll go back here and I'll show you an example of that. If I come in here to page history, I can see who modified this document when. I can see that the document was modified today, just a few minutes ago, by the administrator, and I can see that it was also modified, or really it was probably created, and I can see what version of it. That's sort of the raw HTML in there. But what we can see is I can see what the version of what all the older versions of the SOP. So we have full historical tracking. We know who's modified it. We know who's approving these things. We know who says they've been trained on them. So let's go a few other things. So built into the system already is the ability to have serial numbers. So all we've done is we've just carried over that option into this screen. So this is the ability to assign lot numbers or serial numbers to any inbound raw material, and also to assign the serial number to any finished product. I also get full traceability. In this example, I can look at stock moves and I can see every single sales order that had that lot number on it. And then I could go into those sales orders, I could see who the customers are. So you can see up here we get full upstream and downstream traceability on a per lot number basis. So I can click downstream, I can click upstream, and then I can see obviously what raw materials went into it, and I could also see what customers have received the product. Now, when we set that option where we said yes, we do initial audits and yes, we do follow-up audits, what the system is going to do for each vendor that you specify is what we call a GMP vendor. This, you could be buying ink cartridges from somebody and they could be in the system as a vendor, and we wouldn't want to apply GMP to it. So if we check off that a supplier is what we call a GMP vendor, then what we can do is we can come in here and the system will automatically create an initial audit for them. So let me show you an example. We're going to come into vendors, and I have a few vendors in here. So let's say that I come in here to one of my vendors, and we click on them here. So what you can see here that we've marked off for this vendor, we've added this checkbox that says this is a GMP vendor. That means that these procedures, this module and the audits and all of those things, the COAs, apply to this company. And if I come over here, you'll see it created a new tab. It creates this tab called Vendor Qualification. And here I can see the history of all the COAs and all the audits for this particular supplier. Now you'll see here an initial audit was not done, the follow-up audit wasn't done, and and the COA verification, well, there's required to do 3, we've only done 1, so that we haven't met that procedure either. So the status is they're certifying. They are not certified, but we are in the process of certifying them. So I'm going to go to an example here. I'm going to show you now. If I come into this initial audit, and then I'm going to go ahead and approve it. So I'm going to come in here. It's going to create the audit. Now for the audit, let's go over that for a second. I can't assign auditors. These can be both auditors who are partners, could be an external auditor. If you're using Eurofins or somebody like that, and they're out there and they're going to go do the audit, you could put them in and track their information. If you had other users, these are employees of your company, you could assign them in here in terms of that. Auditees, well, that's going to be the customer. And then you may have a list of questions, procedures, and such, and you can see in here our related SOPs. This is where you could have a vendor audit SOP, and you could associate it with this. So you can fill out all this information. So let's go ahead and we're just going to say pass. Are you sure? Yes. Okay, so what we've done here is we've passed this. Now if we come back over here, now you can see the initial audit was done. The initial audit is passed, and what it did is it automatically scheduled a follow-up audit for 1 year out from the date of the original. And then you can see the follow-up audit is checked, meaning that it's in process. So what will happen is, if you do not do this follow-up audit, so basically it means is that the audit procedure is sort of good to go until May 1st, 2014. If May 1st, 2015 comes around, sorry, if May 2nd, 2015 comes along, and this is still open, then all of a sudden this will no longer, it wouldn't say certified, it would say non-certified. Essentially, we've lost, or you could also think about this, they're no longer qualified, because that 1 year has lapsed. So there's no more having to put this stuff in your calendar. We know automatically the system is going to track the qualification and where a vendor is. So now let's go in here, and you can see that we have in here number of verified COAs. Okay, so here's one. We put a COA in the system here, and we'll actually do it from this screen. We're going to come over here and click COAs. So let's say that I order a product from a certain supplier, Unichem, and I put the product in here. I say that I ordered some hyaluronic acid, and I just made up some results for this test. So let's say that what happens is that I send it off to a third party. I send it off to Alchemist or Analytical Labs or Eurofins or someone like that, and they're going to send me back a PDF file. I can associate that PDF file, and I can upload it directly into the system. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in I'm going to enter the results of the COA. Okay, and what it's going to do, it's going to compare this screen against your product spec. That's for you to decide. It's your job, according to the FDA, to have a product spec per product. And what this system is going to do is enforce whatever you say that whatever your standards are. So let me show you how to set that. So we can come in here to products, and we're going to just open up this hyaluronic acid. We're going to go in here and edit it. And you can see we have this GMP tab, and we're doing the same thing. Does GMP apply? We're saying, well, yes, it applies to this. Again, there could be products that maybe cardboard boxes you stock, but you don't want to apply this procedure to that, so you would choose no. You can put in here which labs test that product. So if I wanted to, I could say ABC Testing Company is one of the vendors that will test this product for me. Now this is where you're going to put in your product qualifications, or you could call it your product standards. Now what I've put in here is I've said that purity, and you can type this is free text, this is an indicator, and then I'm going to put in a value, and then I'm going to put in some sort of unit of measure. So I'm saying is that purity needs to be greater than or equal to 90%. Heavy metals should be less than or equal to 20 parts per million. Plate count should be less than or equal to 100 CFUGs. So what's going to happen is when that COA gets entered, so remember these values, we've got 90 and 20. Let's go back in here. Well, I entered in 91 and 15. Well, those, we know, so this way I don't have to go back and constantly look at my specs and figure out did it meet or did it not meet my spec. If I enter the results in here, it's going to give me an option. I'll show you one that hasn't been done yet. So we'll open up a similar one. And you can see already this one I did as a test, and I put in 88%, which again, this isn't real. That's not a real number. But I just put that in to show, and you can see it's already flagged as red. We haven't even processed it yet, and the system is already going, oh, this already doesn't look good. Now if I click Process COA, this is going to change from a draft state, and it's going to change to rejected. Now we also have the option, if something's been rejected, that we can retest it. So maybe the vendor goes, you know what, I know that stuff's good. Something's squirrely with your lab. We would like you to retest it. We'll pay for it. Then we could do is we could retest the sample, send it off to another lab, make any notes we want in here, and such on that. So this is where we are tracking it. Now once we have 3 approved COAs for a vendor, so if we come back over here to our vendor here, we come in here to vendor qualification. Once we have 3 approved COAs, the checkbox for COA verification will be checked off. And it will say number of verified COAs, it will say 3 or 4 or 5. But it needs to be greater than or equal to what you put in the GMP settings right here. Okay, we'll move on to the next one here. We're going to come in here to equipment. You may have your building, mixers, bag fillers, capsule machines. You may have a number of different assets or equipment that you can put in here. So what I can do is I can come in here and I can put in, let's say I have a vMixer. I can assign the specific location within my building if I have a large facility. I can assign it to a certain user in the system, and I can put in some information on this. I could put in the model number, right? I could put in serial number. Now this next thing is something we're testing right now, and I'll show you, see if we can get a little sample of it working. So what we do is we generate a barcode image. What we can now do is I can go in here to asset report, and I can open up this asset report, and what this is going to do is I'm going to print this off, this QR code, and then I'm going to go over and I'm going to stick it onto the actual piece of equipment. And the thing we're working on right now, and we've got probably another month or so before it's out, will be an Android app where you can take this application on a tablet or a cell phone. You can walk over to this mixer, scan the barcode with the app, and then you can record maintenance that you've done through the application, which would be really nice. Or you could do, for example, pull up pending manufacturing orders, pull up pending work orders, etc., and then be able to do all that directly from a tablet. That way I'm not having to run back and forth to a desk. I don't have some paper logbook that's not searchable, not tied into other things, just hanging from the mixer on a chain, right? We all know what that looks like. So, and you can see I can also put in information, the manufacturer, the warranty information, whatever else I want. And also, as this piece of equipment gets used in actual manufacturing runs, you'll see the actual meter, so we can keep track of how much time this thing has been used. So this is the piece of equipment. And what we can do over here is we're going to come in here to recurring maintenance. This is where we define what kind of recurring maintenance we want to do. So I'm going to just call this clean mixer. I'll call it, it's clean. We have 3 mixers, we're going to clean mixer 1. I'm going to choose which equipment, and I'll just say it's mixer. Is it breakdown, corrective, or preventative? So you could manually create your own separate maintenance orders. For example, if a machine was broken down and you needed to fix it. But this is preventative maintenance. This is stuff that we know we want to do on a schedule. This could be a pest control reoccurring maintenance we could do. And that would be for building. We would do that. So let's say preventative maintenance. If I wanted to, if I have a large facility, I have parts in a specific location for this machine, I could put that in here if I like. Frequency. Well, what we're going to do is we clean this thing monthly. And maybe there's a separate SOP that says we clean it every time we do a batch, but we also do a deep cleaning once a month, right? I could assign it to some employee in the system, and I could say, when do I first want to do this? Well, I want to do it starting tomorrow. And then, how long do I want this schedule to go out for? And go, well, I want this thing to go ahead and create these for the next 6 months. So for the next 6 months, so that means it's going to create 6 maintenance orders, 1 per month, starting on the 22nd, going out, making 1 per month. And now what I can do is go ahead and come in here, and I can put in additional details. Some of this looks repetitive, but this is where we can go ahead and do is put in maintenance list. So maybe this maintenance order I created has me where I have to do things on multiple machines. But we'll just say it's just 1 machine. So maybe I have a particular part. So if I stock my parts, I could say which part do I need to put in here, and maybe I need to do is replace a belt on a machine as an example. And I might come in here and stock a belt, and I want to do is replace the belt on an electric motor every so often. But I can put in my SOPs. I can put in any additional details here I want outside of what could be in the SOP. Labor, I can put in a lot of additional details if I like inside of here. We can also create the task associated with it. So you can see that there's a lot of options we can do in terms of, so we'll just call this, clean mixer. So you can go, same thing, preventative. This is if we had, maybe it's not just clean mixer, maybe it's step 1, clean this part of the machine. And then I have another task, which is for another part of the machine, another task. So I begin to build up. Maybe there's 5 tasks to do, and I could have each one of them in here. So, right, I'm saying clean mixer sort of generically, but it could be that there's really, 5 different ones that are in here. So what happens is that, so what happens here is that we go ahead and we save it, and then it will do, and just to keep the video kind of short, I'm not going to go through and do it all, but what happens is that it will generate my, you can see it did my first one here for today. And then it's going to do is as soon as I confirm maintenance, I say I've done this. And then the system will do is, and then before the next time, it will then generate one for the next month. Same thing, if I have maintenance that has not been done by the due date, that will also flag an out of compliance report. In that out of compliance report, we'll see, oh, this person didn't do the SOP training, this maintenance order wasn't done, those type of things. And then obviously I can also come in here and just say that I have a breakdown, right? So you can see I created a maintenance order, assign it to somebody that just says, hey, maybe I'm just putting in here, system was broke, or that the mixer was broke and we need to order some parts for it. What parts do we need to order? Come over here, put in purchase orders for that. What's already built in, kind of standard in the system, is around manufacturing. So this is where I can create my bill of materials. I can have my different ingredient lists for each one of these. Just like I had equipment, I also can come in here and I have work centers. And for my mixer, I can come in here and I can associate specific. So you can see here with this work center, I may have multiple mixers associated with a work center, and as a manufacturing order is created, it will automatically look at the bill of materials. It will look at the route of how do things get routed. Here's an example of a route. There's 12 ingredients in this route. I have to weigh 12 ingredients. I need to mix once. I need to fill once per bag in terms of final product, and then I need to pack 4 of these in a box. So this is where we can create these work center operations. This is what is going to be tied in with our Android application, so that a lot of this work can be checked off as having been done through a simple, cheap little Android tablet. And when these manufacturing owners, I'll just show you an example of one. So we'll go in and look at an old one here. So we'll come in and look at one of these here, and what we can do is, for a manufacturing order, we can assign the lot numbers for the raw materials, and this is a test database, so we didn't have them in here, but so the system allows you to do is assign serial numbers to each raw material, assign a serial number to the finished goods, and this way, this is how I generate that finished product serial number and how I have that full traceability. One more thing we're working on that we'll have released here probably in another week or two is also the ability to create a finished product COA based on a template. So if you want to be able to give your customers a COA, now this is probably if you're a raw material supplier or if you're selling ingredients to other supplement companies and those companies want a COA, what you're going to do is you're going to put a template in the system. That's going to be like your logo, your address, whatever look and feel you want to it. And then based upon results you get from lab tests, it will generate those COAs for you, so you don't have to go back into a PDF or go back into whatever Word or whatever program you're using, Excel, and sit there and make a bunch of changes and then save it. It will pull that data automatically because we already know our test results, so we can simply combine test results with product name and all this, and this is be a separate option to where you can generate COAs, and that will save a lot of time and also be able to save different versions and such of those. So that wraps it up. That is kind of a quick run through of SaaSier's GMP module for the Open ERP system. Thanks for listening.